Okay, good morning members. A very warm welcome to Wellington House, especially to those of you who've not been here before. This is the new home of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and a warm welcome to our 12 new members to this committee, and members who've kindly subbed today as well. So thank you, Carol, for subbing for Councillor Firth. And just for the benefit of our new members, can I just ask that we introduce ourselves? So I'm Councillor Parsons-Holt. I'm from Calderdale Council, the chair of the Transport and Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee. If I can introduce you to our new deputy chair, Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Councillor Andrew Pinnock, Kirklees Council from Cleckheaton.
Oh, sorry. I must say that if you want to speak, we have to press the button and the camera will come round.
Right, I'll try again. Councillor Andrew Pinnock, Kirklees from Cleckheaton, and I have been here before many years ago.
Hi, I'm Councillor Anna Watson. I'm from sit on Bradford Council. My ward is Shipley, and I'm a new councillor. I was elected in May, and I haven't been on transport scrutiny before, so very much looking forward to it.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Carol Thurkill, also from Bradford Council. I represent Clayton and Fairweather Green. I'm a Labour Party member.
Morning, I'm Councillor Tina Benton from Calderdale Council. I represent Brickhouse Ward.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Dot Foster. I've been here for a long time. I'm from Calderdale and I represent Sudbury Bridge.
Mark Thompson, Kirklees Council, representing Birkenshaw and Burstall.
Councillor Joanne Dodds from Bradford, representing the Great Harton Ward, and it's the first time on the committee.
Sorry.
Hello, I'm Helen Elton. I'm Interim Head of Transport Policy at the Combined Authority.
Hi, I'm Graham Davis. I'm Travel Systems Manager and look after the real-time system.
I'm Dave Pearson, Director of Transport Property Services at Combined Authority.
Morning, Councillor Kayleigh Brooks, Leeds City Council, representing Little London and Woodhouse Ward, which you're sat in. You're most welcome.
Morning, I'm Councillor Jess Lennox. I represent Crossgates and Winmore in East Leeds. This is my first time on Wyker Scrutiny.
Morning, Tony Ames from Wakefield Council. Nobody special. I represent Pontefract South Ward. This is the first time on this committee. I was on economy last year.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben Hanson. I'm a consultant guest from the University of Leeds. I did some analysis of the bus systems recently. So.
Okay, great. Welcome everyone. Okay, so a bit of general housekeeping. The teas, coffees are provided at the back if anyone likes them. There's a water cooler in the reception. Toilet facilities are through there. Turn left. I've always wanted to do that. The security arrangements means guests can't go anywhere outside the lobby area without an officer, and in the event of a fire, guests should leave the building by the side door, which is down there, I think. Is it not there? Through there, right, thank you. Okay, muster points. Apparently there's no muster points. We don't do muster points, so if there is an incident, and let's hope there isn't, the instruction is to run. Run in different directions. So the following instruction is to return around sort of 15 minutes later if it's safe to do so. Okay, Hannah, would you like to add any more on that?
Thank you, Chair. Not at this moment. Do you want me to give some apologies?
Yeah, I'll just come on. Okay. So, can I please remind members that their phones are to be switched off for the duration of the meeting? If you do need it to be on, can we have them on silent? Okay, so today, Thursday the 22nd of September, it's still just 2 weeks since the passing of our monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, so it's still quite fresh in our memories. it's astonishing to see actually how much the transport network has changed during her reign. When Elizabeth first ascended to the throne, can you believe that there were still steam trains in action? So they were still very much the dominant form of travel, and the Queen loved travel by train. And she's witnessed obviously so many developments. So I'd just like to extend our sincere condolences to King Charles III and his family at this sad time. And before we start, can we just take a moment just to remember Queen Elizabeth? Thank you. Thank you, members. Okay, so if you're watching this meeting online and would like to access our agenda pack, please just click onto West Yorkshire Combined Authority, go to Transport and Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee and click on today's date, 22nd of September, and there you'll find all the information that we'll be discussing today, and welcome. Okay, welcome also to our Friends of the Earth guests who are sitting in the public gallery over there. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Okay, so this is our first meeting of Transport Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee, and it's been expanded to include its responsibility for physical infrastructure. Okay, so that's sort of, if any of you sit on place scrutiny, it's the same as place, basically. So last year there were several discussions at our meetings where we discovered that planning and transport probably needed a little bit more connection. Those conversations needed to happen earlier, and that more needs to be done to make sure that those links were made. So Transport Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee oversees the region's physical assets, the resources, the plans, the policies, the projects, built environments such as transport network, infrastructure, bus, road, rail, active travel, information systems, and also the natural environment, okay, so such as waterways, climate, forest, green spaces. So we cover a lot. We cover a lot more than we did last year. Okay, so apologies, please, Hannah.
Thank you, Chair. So we've had apologies from Councillors Firth and Ferguson, and as you said previously, we've got Councillor Thurkill substituting today, so thank you for coming.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, declarations of pecuniary interest. Does any member have any pecuniary interest to declare at this meeting? Thank you. And can I please check that all members have filled out and submitted their declaration of pecuniary interest forms? If not, then please see Hannah at the end. Thanks, members. Okay, exclusion of press and public. Are there any exclusions? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, so item number 4, transport infrastructure and scrutiny governance arrangements. Would you like to talk us through that, Hannah? Thank you.
I can, thank you, Chair. So as you're all aware, every year we get the scrutiny and governance arrangements. So that's the same as usual, but this report asks you to note those and the terms of reference, which touched on previously. We've had a bit of a change with the addition of place, the scrutiny standing orders, and quorum and substitute rules, and then of course the meeting dates at the end. Yeah, and that's it really. So any questions, they're welcome.
Any questions, members? I mean, as the report states, we meet every 2 months and quoracy is always an issue. I've heard that yesterday's meeting couldn't go ahead because there was just one member short. So it is a really high quoracy, but legislation basically dictates that to us. So we've got 2/3, so we need to have at least 11 people to go ahead. So if I can check that, has everyone got a named substitute? No. Okay, if you haven't, then maybe ask Anna and she'll explain to you that there are certain things you can do. Okay. Also, you know, if anyone on the Combined Authority Scrutiny Committee can sub for anyone else, I think that's the main gist of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the case. It is in the standing orders if you want to have a look at them.
Okay, so and also if you can please let me know now if you are going to leave the meeting, because that can also affect our quoracy. If anyone needs to leave early. Is there anything else you want to add, Hannah? No? Okay. Has anyone got any questions? Any more questions on that? No? Thank you, members. Okay, Item 5, meeting of the last minutes of the last meeting held on Thursday the 10th of March. And I'm aware that most of you wouldn't have been here for that. I think I think there was just 3 or 4 of us. I just wanted to add the presence of Councillor Kim Groves with Susan Hinchcliffe. It was a bit of a handover. Kim Groves was very much the leader of transport for quite a number of years, and she was helping both Susan and I to settle in. So yeah, Councillor Kim Groves. Of those of us who were present, so I think that Councillor Ferguson's not here, and Rob Finnegan. So I think it was just you and me, Dot. Oh yeah, you were subbing, of course, Andrew. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Is there anything that you can see on the minutes?
No.
Okay. So I'll propose.
Looks fine to me.
Thank you. I'll propose that we take those minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting. So of the 3 of us, raise hand. Thank you, members. Okay, item number 6, Chair's comments and update. So firstly, I'm aware that we had a little meeting as a group when we were doing some training. I'd like to apologise for not being as active over the summer as I was originally expecting to be. Unfortunately, I was struck with COVID, and it took a little bit longer to get over than I had originally anticipated. So since this last committee met, I've had several meetings with our Deputy Chair, Councillor Pinnock, and we discussed the situation about bus strikes and the number of people they were affecting over the summer. We as a group have had the initial meeting to discuss some of the items that we'd like to see on the work programme. I'd like to thank everybody who attended that meeting. Some fruitful things came out of it. I've also had the opportunity of meeting with the Chair of Transport again, Councillor Hinchcliffe, leader of Bradford Council. We discussed some of the challenges that have been brought up at our previous meetings, such as the rise of inflation and how that affects projects, and also the impact that that's going to have on the implementation of the active travel agenda, and also the new clean air scheme. We talked about that, which is being trialled in Bradford, starting this week. Is that right? Monday, right? Okay. It's live on Monday. It's being rolled out live on Monday. Thank you. The Breathe Better Bradford campaign, it's got its own website, so it's an interactive map, so you can check where the zone is, and Bradford will be a Class C plus clean air zone, which basically means that there'll be charges for all non-compliant vehicles that go through there, except for privately owned passenger cars. So it's mainly commercial vehicles. In our last meeting together, we discussed a skills audit. It's really useful to know what skills and knowledge that everybody brings to the room. For example, so Councillor Ferguson, she's not here today, but she's got a background in psychology, which is going to help with behaviour change. And Councillor Councillor Hames, he's quite knowledgeable about the Freeport in Hull, because we had a conversation about that as well, didn't we? Councillor Lennox, we had a conversation about Flexibus that runs through your ward. You know, all of this is really useful stuff to have in the room. So don't ever feel that a question or something, a comment is something that you don't feel comfortable to bring. Please bring everything. Okay, there's no silly question in this room. There's definitely no place for any. I know that a lot of us feel like, oh, I'm new to this. I've had a few conversations with people, but honestly, all your thoughts and messages are welcome. Okay, so one of the main developments I've been dealing with in the last few weeks is the real-time information system, which we're going to come on to it in this next item, item 7, bus service improvement plan. So Wicker has been successful in receiving 70 million to improve our bus services, and half of this has been to reduce the cost of the fares. For those of you who were not here last year, the bus service improvement plan, if any of you want to see it, I've brought a document with me today. This was the original document that was written last year. And the enhanced partnership is basically the way that the bus companies and the stakeholders work together to make that happen. to deliver that. So, Dave, would you like to expand on that?
I'm going to invite Helen to start, and then I'll add some issues.
Welcome, Helen. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. So I guess we'll start by just with a little bit of background on where we are, and thank you, Councillor, just in terms of kind of that immediate introduction. But, so the bus service improvement plan we were required to submit last year under the National Bus Strategy. We submitted, as required by October last year, to set out our vision for bus for West Yorkshire. And this was then into a competitive funding round for which we were successful in receiving £70 million to deliver. Through negotiations with government, we settled on a package which, as said, half of that was for fares and the rest for network and other supporting elements. So what this report is doing is just basically providing a bit of background on that, and then also just giving you a bit of an update on where we are on some of those areas. So I'll trot through each of those, and then there may be other points that Dave wants to add when we've been through them. So what we're setting out here, first of all, is the first kind of tranche, if you like, was around the Mayor's Fares. We launched the Mayor's Fares proposition on the 4th of September. This has, working with the operators, this has set the maximum single fare to £2 across all of West Yorkshire and reduced our M-card cost, so our day cost, if you like, day travel cost, from £5.50 to £4.50. So this was brought in from the 4th of September, and we are in the process of delivering that, and that will hopefully run for the full 3 years of the funding. I should say, just before I go on to there, so we're currently in the process of working through our enhanced partnership scheme. So as Councillor Parsons has said, we are in an enhanced partnership with operators, which was required to happen for us to be able to access funding. We made the timescales from government to do that, which was to be in the scheme from April, which was great. And we're currently now in an operator objection period to be able to deliver our bus service improvement plan funding, and then through to consultation. So we should have government funding through by November. So the fares is the first part of that, and then the second part of that is the network. So we are basically working on a network plan alongside the fares. So that network plan is looking at how we can spend, looking at what network we would ideally like to have across West Yorkshire in terms of a number of set of principles, if you like, for what a good network should include, but also looking at how we should prioritise certain elements within that with our bus service improvement plan funding. So the stipulations from government is quite clear in that this shouldn't be kind of almost replacing recent kind of changes to the network that have happened due to COVID, etc. This is about kind of enhancements and things to be able to improve the offer of the bus network across West Yorkshire. So that is our current kind of focus at the moment. And then finally around that, we have a number of other elements that are in our bus service improvement plan that we're looking to bring forward alongside that. So the paper kind of summarises really the next steps around kind of our position around our bus network plan and the fares side. Dave, is there more you'd like to add on to that?
Yeah, I think that's, thanks Helen, I think that what's quite important to sort of stress really is that the bus service improvement plan, which is a real positive step in terms of how we can move forward with buses in West Yorkshire, and 2 weeks ago we launched the Mayor's Fares initiative, which has brought down bus fares for a lot of people, and aiming to encourage people back to the bus. But I think we should also reflect on the fact that we do this in some particularly difficult financial times in terms of the wider economy, and that impacts quite significantly on buses. And I just wanted to touch on a few aspects of that are very much live at the moment. As you probably will appreciate, the cost of living and the inflationary pressures that we're talking about in terms of fuel costs and in terms of other costs in the economy, also impacting on public transport. As well as that, public transport use is not at the levels it was at in 2019, and the levels of use of buses is around about 80% of what we were seeing in 2019, and it's quite clear that to a certain extent that's a longer term effect of people's changing their travel behaviours and having moved through a pandemic and moving away from the pandemic effect, but the pandemic effect in longer term is having the effect on people making fewer journeys and in certain jobs people are doing continue to work from home more and coming into the office or their workplace less. So that's something that is prevalent. And of course, with 80% less passengers, there's 20% less revenue, and that's a factor as well. All through the pandemic, bus services were sustained by financial support both from government and local government, and from government it was in the form of specific grants related to keeping the bus services going, and in local government the Combined Authority, as other transport authorities have done, have sort of tried to maintain some financial stability by maintaining concessionary fare payments at the levels that we would have been paying if the pandemic hadn't happened. So, and we'll continue to do that, and the government has continued its funding support. There was quite a lot of uncertainty across the summer as to whether the government was going to continue that funding support, and we were looking at some fairly significant reductions in the bus network, and the bus network has reduced. It has reduced over the last 2 years, and so the network that we have at the moment is running to a lower level of frequency, and there have been some service reductions. Earlier in the summer, we were looking at quite a significant amount of bus services that were likely to be reduced when this funding comes to an end, because of the sort of combined effect of the loss of fares income and the increased costs. Funding's still there, but the bus operators are still making economies and savings to balance their books. And I think as ward councillors, you will have received emails from my colleagues this week with some further sort of reductions and alterations to services that are going to happen in a couple of weeks' time as a result of this consequence. The beginning of October was going to be when the government funding came to an end and the major cuts were going to happen, but there are still some areas who will experience their bus service reducing a little. So that's all quite a difficult scenario that we're building. So to a certain extent, the bus service improvement plan, which Helen's just outlined, is our recovery plan as well. So the fares reductions that went in a couple of weeks ago are there to encourage more people to travel by bus. And travel behaviours are probably changing for lots of different reasons as well. I outlined the way in which travel behaviour has changed because of different working patterns. Cost of living pressures on people might actually change that again. So in terms of people changing the way in which they travel, because they're changing how responding to how the cost of living's impacted on them, whether it's their fuel costs, their heating costs, or other things. So it's quite a sort of febrile economic climate that we do this in, and to a certain extent, I think it's important that the bus service improvement plan is the way we build out of this, and we use that funding to best effect to encourage more people onto the bus, to actually evolve the bus to meet new and changed travel behaviours and habits, and to sort of build for the future. So I think we've got, as Helen's pointed out, the focus now having sort of implemented the first phase of that, which is the fares. The focus now is on getting the bus network right, and sort of getting some level of recovery in there, so that we get to April of next year, which is when the government funding comes to an end, in a place where we're sort of working both with the bus operators and with the funding we've got from the Bus Service Improvement Plan to a network which meets people's needs going forward, rather than necessarily propping up a network which was there before. So I'll stop there, but I think it's just a useful sort of context, particularly economic context. We've got to see our bus service operating in the current environment.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Helen. And welcome, Mark. Okay, so I'm aware that obviously we're losing some services as Dave's just explained. There's probably going to be a lot of questions and discussion that we want to have around that. I'm also aware that we've got one of our officers needs to leave at 11. So I'm wondering if you've got any questions or anything that we want to ask Dave. Can we write those down and come back to those later on, if that's okay? And we'll move on to the real-time information topic, if that's okay. All right. Okay. So real-time information. So both Councillor Stuart Galton from Leeds and Councillor Mike Barnes from Calderdale referred the real-time information system to be looked at by our committee. Councillor Galton referred to me to an article on accuracy of real-time bus information and the accompanying research done by Ben. And just to put this into context, so one of the key components of the Bus Service Improvement Plan is the improved journey time, and also ultimately improved reliability. Yeah, it's one of the holy trinity of what we need to have a good transport system. And I'm sure we'll all agree reliability is so important, you know, to get your work on time, get hospital appointments, all those important meetings, to get to meetings on time. And one of the things that concerned me was, as Helen's just explained, you know, they were doing a promotion, and this £2 promotion, which was introduced first week in September, just happened to coincide at the same time as this research has been published in the Yorkshire Evening Post. So, you know, it costs a lot of money to subsidise our buses, as Dave's just explained, and all the marketing required to get that out there, to do a promotion on this scale. So one of my concerns was also, if we do manage to persuade to get some new people on these buses with new fares, the last thing we want to do is people to have a bad experience, coming back to our behaviour change. Yeah. So a bad experience will mean that they might decide not to use the bus again. A very real possibility, and the opportunity for that behaviour change has been lost. So apologies, members, if I did bombard you with lots of invitations to come to meetings in the last few weeks, but I really do feel like we need to act now, and I hope that I can bring you all with me on that. As a result of those meetings, so I've invited 2 people to come and talk to us here today. Ben Hanson from Leeds University and Graham Davis from the Travel Systems, our Travel Systems Manager, our real-time manager, who's also one of the original creators of the IT system, I understand. So, as most of you all know, Scrutiny is based on evidence, and where best to find the evidence from a doctor at Leeds University. I'd like to warmly welcome Ben Hanson from Leeds University, who did the research and gathered the information from the 2 bus routes, number 72, Leeds Bradford commuter route, and the number 6, which is the student commuter route. Ben, would you like to begin by telling us a little bit about your research and how you did it? Thank you.
Yeah, I will do. But I will start saying this isn't a negative thing for anyone who created the IT systems or anything like that. We haven't had a chat yet, have we? So anyway, we should do that at some point. So the idea was, okay,
we all want to be friends at the end of this.
Exactly right. We're all working forward together to actually solve some problems, right? So let's do that. So the idea behind the research was anecdotal evidence. You wait at a bus stop, and the times on the bus stop, the live times that count down, didn't seem to be progressing with actual time. And there could be many reasons for that. It could be anything. So I did a bit of the statistics of that. I plotted averages over 2 weeks worth of buses of time waiting versus actual time passing to see the difference. And it turns out that if like a bus, say it says 5 minutes on the board, previously it would have been like 6 or 7 minutes. And there's loads of reasons that could be. But because that sort of thing adds up over time, then you'll be waiting for a bit longer than you would expect whilst you're at a bus stop. So if you get to a bus stop, it says 10 minutes, it might be 12, 13, 14 minutes, this sort of thing. And I split the data by time of day and also by type of day, so weekend, weekday, and times during the day, so rush hour, not rush hour. And it turns out that there's something underneath all that. Now, I also happen to know that changes have been made since that report has come out. But we'll get onto that, right. So that's what the research was anyway.
Thank you, Ben. So if you've ever been on any transport committees or scrutiny, a lot of the questions are around, buses are being cancelled. So in our culture, we think that we look at that information, we see it as read, that is something that we can rely on, and I think it's that miscommunication, is the information real and live, or are the buses being cancelled? And I'm hoping we'll get some answers to that today, but I'm suspecting that there's a mixture of both going on here. So just a little bit of evidence from the Transport Committee meeting on 1st of July. Councillor Neil Buckley from Leeds said that he had the worst bus, the 7S, worst service in England, he said, as far as complaints are concerned, with buses not arriving, and described the same reporting of the real-time information system, basically, that we've all come across. So the 5 minutes, the 3 minutes, then described it, and he said it was disappearing into a different world. I like that. Okay, the next, in the same meeting, 1 hour, 3 minutes, Councillor Eleanor Thompson, also from Leeds, raised the reliability issue, again with numerous short-term cancellations. And yeah, some of these cancellations might be happening, but it might be the information system that we have. So she said that she's now got people who just can't rely on buses, and they've stopped using the service, and she was really disappointed in that meeting. She said as someone who runs a bus user group, she was just really frustrated. So, it's something that we at Wicker can look at. So we're not blaming anybody here at all. This is like, just let's have a look at this. I think that's what you're saying as well, isn't it, Ben? We definitely don't want to do any blame. It's not about blame. So I'll now ask our real-time guru, Graham Davis. Would you like to speak first?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Dave.
Bring Graham in a second, but I think it's just useful to give members a little bit of a sort of context, really, of the real-time system and how it works and what it's doing. I mean, firstly, it's probably one of the biggest systems in the country, and it extends beyond West Yorkshire into South Yorkshire and other parts of Yorkshire. And we as West Yorkshire manage it on behalf of other partners around Yorkshire. So we have, essentially, it's a system which we procure and manage on behalf of other authorities as well, and how it originally was funded and continues to be funded from the Combined Authority and the other constituent councils contribute to both the running costs of that and the capital cost of the systems that sit behind it. And as Graham will probably explain, we've been through quite a lot of process over the last year or two in terms of refreshing those systems and processes. But the role of the bus companies is another one I just wanted to make you aware of. So whilst the core system that essentially sort of provides the information and puts the things on the screens and puts the things on the internet and mobile phone systems, etc., is a public good, as it were, in terms of something that's funded and managed by ourselves as a combined authority. The bus operators have a key role to play in it, because essentially it is using the data from their buses themselves as and sort of managing that, and the bus operators also have a role in the management of the system. So if a bus is marked cancelled, it's marked cancelled because the bus operator has made it such. So to a certain extent, there are there are two aspects of how these things to consider. There's how the computer processing and the IT and the technology works, and Graham can elaborate on that a little bit. And then there's how the bus operators in particular manage their operations and manage their input into that system. And I think we need to sort of separate those two things a little bit, because both are factors in what the sort of results that Ben and others have identified. So I'll pass on to Graham.
Thank you, Dave. Welcome, Graham.
Right. Fundamentally, I'll try and explain it in simplest form. The system is really three parts. There's an input, a process, and an output. The input takes in numerous things. So we've got the operator feeds, the operator data, which is probably the key thing which causes the most issue. And then there's a centralised processing system that generates the predictions, the schedule adherence, and then there's the outputs, which goes to displays on street, web, third parties, all over Yorkshire. This thing gets output massively. So, looking at what Ben did in the report, I'd noticed prior to Ben's report an issue that we'd had with certain things which we call cross-journey predictions. So, a cross-journey prediction is a bus comes in on one service, for instance, the service 6, it comes in on the service 8, and the next journey is created as a prediction out of the bus station, so it comes out as service 6. So this is what's required to create a lot of predictions you'll see in bus stations, a lot of predictions on street. So we use the data the operators providers that tell us that a bus runs on running board 1, and his next journey is the number 1, and it basically generates a prediction for the next journey. So we have a lot more information, so this gives people, mainly city centres, the outgoing data. So I looked at Service 6 because I live in Leeds, and historically we've got an awful lot of process data which we've had for years and years and years in the system. So I went back and looked at actually this particular service. I picked a time, first week in September, first Friday in September. I picked a service at 5 o'clock across the time of the board. And looking at what the data the operators provided to the real-time system for this service. For instance, the service starts in Leeds bus station, has to go through Leeds up to the university. And if anybody knows Leeds, the Hedgerow Albion Street is just chaos at a peak time. So looking historically, in the data that the operators provided, the scheduled data, the bus was given 18 minutes in September 18 to run this particular route from the centre of town up to the university. And this has varied over the period of years when there's work going on in Leeds. And obviously then we've had COVID, which has a major impact on stuff and the work that's going on. To the fact that September 21, the bus was only given 12 minutes within the data. And currently now it's only given 14 minutes to get from the central Leeds to the university, which is impossible, basically. So this creates a system where when the next set of predictions coming through for the vehicle, it says the prediction is basically the scheduled time that the operators have told us this service is going to run. So it sits on the display, and this is what the analysis you see, where you'll see a prediction sitting for a level of time. Because within the system, we don't have a thing called rising predictions, so the predictions will hold what they are. Historically, it's never been put on, it was never asked to be done, because there are impacts about rising predictions, because a prediction or the lateness is created when the bus goes past a stop, and it's basically how the time the bus passes a stop against the schedule that we've been given, and it creates how late it is along the route, and then that generates certain adherence within the system. But creating that sort of rising predictions can cause problems. You'll get a bottleneck and you'll suddenly see a sign when they did the original a long time ago. You'll see displays start rising like 5, 6, 7, 8 because a bus may be held in traffic or obstructed on the road, and suddenly if it's released, the time drops quickly. So it was always said that we set at this level of holding this prediction. But what's happening now is the timetables need to be looked at by the operators to actually match what the actual running is of the services. They haven't been changed considerably since COVID. There have been slight increases on timetables for buses to be operational. I think there's operational issues that the operators don't have enough drivers. They're trying to jam a lot of services into certain times and try to cut times on the end of routes where, you know, they swap over from one service to another. And basically then the timetable impacts it. Now, the data analysis I've got, the operators have got access to it. So they can look at services and say, right, this service is constantly running late, and readjust the timings to it. Sometimes they've been readjusted, but on a general basis, I don't think a lot of stuff has been readjusted to impact the known increase of things are starting to get busier and busier on the buses, because I know through some of the stats we get through the occupancy level, things are starting to get a lot more people and vehicles and a lot more loading happening. And I see with the contactless payment as well, I've noticed that it takes a bit longer to load for people to pay for that, loading buses, and you can see, you know, constantly throughout the day, services and certain stops are just running late all the time.
Thank you, Graham. Wow. So this is the sort of the conundrum, really. We're living in a technological-based society now, where we can have a look when our pizza arrives. People have that expectation of, like, when's my taxi going to be there? They know. And I know it's a totally different system, I get that. But what we experience as a community is that technology, I'm relying on it and I'm organising my life around it. So yeah, what can you explain to me, just as a complete newbie to this type of conversation around data, what's the difference between the person doing the Deliveroo to what's going on here? And how can we bring them closer together? Thanks.
Well, the Deliveroo is not structured to a timetable. The bus has to run to a timetable. It's a certain thing is, if you put bad data in, you get bad information. So even if you have a non-real-time prediction, there'll be a scheduled time on the side. Now, if you see the scheduled time and the bus is not tracking, it just disappears and the bus turns up 10 minutes later, you're then looking at a timetable on a bus stop that's got the data that the operators have supplied as what the time this bus will run to this stop. So it's not correct at the source, then impacts the output at the end, basically. So it needs to be a continual re-evaluation of how bad our services are performing and how we can change the service to actually be a timetable that's deliverable and not a timetable that we've just thrown in and left in for years and years, and we've not changed because we don't have the resources of the time manpower to change the information, which is, I think, fundamentally what's happening across a lot of...
I was going to say, I agree. I think because of COVID, obviously, the timetables are all out. You know, so you're right. It's the data that's going in at the beginning, isn't it? So next question, really. I'll stop if that's all right. What about a service level agreement? Have we got a service level agreement where we are asking those bus companies, you know, this is the information we want, this is how often we want you to change the timetables, you know, because I'm aware we're paying for this. Is there a service level agreement that goes with that? Either of you, any of you.
Yeah, I think I think the fundamental issue that Graham's pointing out, having sort of done what the sort of sampling that Graham's done and the work that Ben's done as well, is that we seem to find ourselves in a position with bus operators that the assumptions as to how long it takes to get from A to B are not bearing out in terms of how the traffic is behaving. And let's be clear that traffic behaviour has changed and is changing all the time for a variety of different reasons. I think, but just to answer the chair's question, ultimately bus operators are accountable for their what they call schedule adherence, and that's nothing to do with the real-time system. That's what they're obligated to do as bus operators. It's part of their licensing conditions, and the transport, the traffic commissioner is their licensing body, and the traffic commissioner can and has and will take bus operators to task if they're periodically not meeting their obligations in meeting the timetables. So to a certain extent there is a sort of regulatory position there that says if a bus operator is running a timetable that's not achievable in the traffic conditions, then they have to adjust that in their timetables. And generally bus operators do, and they use the data that this system provides to be able to do that. I think we've got a bit of a unique situation is that things have become so unstable across the last 2 years because of the fact that the traffic's changed. So the journey times predictions the journey time sort of assumptions haven't changed with it. Bus operators, as Graham said, are also managing quite significant difficulties around workforce availability as well. So lots of factors involved in this. But to get back to the original question, I think what does need to happen is we need to facilitate some workshop sessions with bus operators saying, well, actually, this is what this analysis is beginning to show. Their analysis should be telling them that as well. And we need a level of realism in the base timetable so that the predictions that come out of the system are based upon an achievable timetable rather than an unachievable timetable. The other issue, just to come back on Graham's point around how the predictions are presented, is that I think what you're saying, tell me if I'm wrong, Graham, I think what we're saying is if we get too precise in that prediction moving around, then a bus that's stuck in traffic will appear to be late, and then suddenly it'll got to the green light, and that time will reduce again, and it'll go up again and down again as the traffic sort of fluctuates. So we sort of need to give some level of stability to the predictions, which I think is what Graham's sort of pointing out. So yeah, I think there's a piece of work to do to make sure this is based upon realistic timetables. I think the second piece of work linked to that is that the staff at the operator end actually do monitor this in real time themselves and make the necessary arrangements. And if they have to cancel a service, some bus operators are better than others, I think it's fair to say, about being upfront about services that are cancelled, and in some respects, from the customer's point of view, not a good thing for a bus service to be cancelled, but at least if we tell people it is, if it has been, then that's more helpful.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think a lot of this is not really about like whether there's buses there. It's like if we can guarantee that the information is true, then we can organise our lives, can't we? If we need to get that taxi, we can get it. You know, we don't want people to miss hospital appointments and stuff. Thank you, Dave. Okay, so I've got a few questions around the room. Councillor Foster, would you like to? Oh, okay, sorry. Councillor Brooks, would you like to go first?
Thank you. Yeah, so it's my understanding that they're allowed to change the timetable 6 times a year, and that is in place to reduce the amount of money that we have to spend updating all the timetables across the region. I mean, that's just from memory because I sat on Transport Committee in 2018 to 19. But so in terms of that, how much sort of timetable enforcement have we ever been known to enforce against an operator for not sticking to timetable when they are allowed to change it that frequently? And what are the outcomes if they keep breaking contract, like their responsibilities? Like, has it ever been a situation where they've been held to account for that? I think furthermore, in terms of the technology that is being used to update the predictions on the boards, it sounds like the technology is a little bit out of date to me. Like, I'm not sure that it's using GPS properly. And does it use Google traffic data? Because like Google uses traffic data all the time. If I were to jump in a car, I can't drive, but if I were to jump in a car and say I want to go to this place by car, it'd say, due to the traffic conditions, it's going to take you X amount of time. Like, is that being fed into the predictions? It's a lot for
Thank you.
I'll answer the first part of Councillor Brooks' question. I think Graham can answer the technical bit. you're quite right. I mean, up until the pandemic, we had an arrangement agreement with bus operators to try and limit the amount of service changes that happened during the year. So it's good memory. It was 6. I'm saying it was because that sort of has fallen apart a bit throughout the pandemic because at various different stages, bus operators have had during that period to make changes, partly in respect of different demand levels and funding levels and all of those sort of factors as part of it. In terms of what they're legally obliged to do, the 6 was always a voluntary agreement, and I think as Helen mentioned the enhanced partnership. I mean, as things settle down, we would want to go back to a situation where we limited the amount of bus service changes as much as possible and kept them at certain junctures during the year. So we do want to go back to that, but we haven't been in that position for 2.5 years because of the difficult situations, the pandemic, and the subsequent economic issues, as I mentioned earlier, have sort of created. In terms of sort of contractual and sort of the enforcement of the licensing provisions, then, as I think I said earlier, the Traffic Commissioner can take action and does take action with bus operators if they're not meeting their requirements in terms of delivering the timetables that they're intended to do. And we also, where the bus service does operate under contract with the Combined Authority, which is a much lower number of services, if they're not meeting the requirements of the contract with the Combined Authority, then obviously we could take enforcement and do take action. We have a penalty point system, so if operators aren't meeting their contractual obligations, they get penalised initially with low-level financial points, but ultimately that can threaten the contract. So there are sort of provisions in place, but I think it is fair to say that we are rebuilding after a period of major instability in terms of how buses have, whilst appear on the surface to have run all the way through the deepest lockdowns and things like that, there have been lots of changes to service levels across the last 2.5 years, and we need to sort of, part of the bus service improvement plan really needs to stabilise that position.
On the Google side of things, no, we don't use that. It's, I would say, getting that data would not be an issue, but it's how reliable that data is and how frequently it's updated that could impact the system. Because chances are, with most places like Scrutiny, it's bus gates anyway, so it's only buses that are creating the flow. We have a lot of information that comes through from the system from the bus flow that can look at creating that information, because most city centres are the prime vehicles going through them. So I wouldn't say it's something we'd look at, because there might not be any traffic in those areas, and specifically city centre. It's how we get that information back and how it is processed, and like I said earlier, how out of date it is, because sat-nav sometimes might tell you that you're approaching traffic, but actually you're sat in that traffic and there's nothing there. So it's what that impact has on then the predictional stuff. I'm in conversations with the supplier about looking at how a prediction would rise, but how to present it, because I don't want to be able to say something goes from 4 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes, because in traffic you're creating such a big jump on maybe having something that levels off. So it might go a couple of minutes up, so it makes it look more realistic, because last thing you want to do is tell somebody something's 10 minutes away. They go into a shop, turn around and the bus drives past them because it's suddenly got through traffic. So it needs to make it sort of balanced. It's more realistic and reasonable for people, instead of, like I said, waiting there for 5 minutes, showing something that says 5 minutes. For instance, like they did the analysis the other day, back in September 18 minutes, the bus was a minute late at the stop. The operator could put the same timetable in September 18 now, and it'd be similar. It would be running the same sort of time level as it'd be running now. So it's that analysis really on the data.
Can I just, I think you Did you want to add something to that, Ben?
It was more going to be
Or was it a question?
potential solution to all of this, actually. If you want.
Can we ask the questions and then we'll come up with the solutions?
Of course.
Okay. Councillor Foster, I think you were next.
Thank you. Over the last few weeks, for one reason or another, mostly related to the fact that my car was completely non-functioning for quite a few weeks, I've spent a lot of time going to work on the bus and attempting to come home from work on the bus. Going to, generally, buses would turn up roughly when they were supposed to. But, you know, I use 2 different apps to attempt to try and get some sort of information about when a bus might turn up. I use Bus Checker. I use the First Bus app. I stand at a bus stop where I increase my chances of a bus turning up. It is extremely frustrating to watch all the school buses going past me, but that's another thing. Usually the first one to turn up is the one that won't take me to where I need to go. But it's just really, really frustrating to just be stood there and think, okay, right, there's a bus due at 10 past. And you get to 15:15 and you think, well, where is this bus? And it might turn up, you know, maybe about 20 past. If it turns up at 20 past, I can get to work on time. 25 past, I'm going to be late. And, yeah, I mean, okay, the weather's been fairly good. I haven't been stood at the bus stop, which incidentally doesn't have a timetable on it, and I can't remember the last time when I did see a bus stop with a timetable attached to it. You know, there's no shelter, there's no perching place, there's no timetable, it's just a bus stop. And, you know, it's a frustrating experience standing there waiting for a bus that says it's due when it doesn't turn up. On the way home, it's an even
Councillor
bigger...
Foster, can I just ask, is there a question? Just that Graham has to leave at 11 and we've got 2 minutes
Right,
left.
okay. So I guess my question is, it's about the reliability of that information, and I guess I know you've already touched on that, but it's just the increasing frustration, and it's no wonder that passenger numbers are down on buses when you cannot rely on the information that you're getting and whether or not your bus is going to turn up. So of course you're going to take the car if you've got that option. So yeah, I mean it's just really to ask about.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your rant. We definitely need. Yeah, we all feel like that, definitely. Okay, Councillor Joanne Dodds. Yeah, I'm just aware. We know what the situation is, right? We know that reliability is an issue. We've all got stories and anecdotal things about that. The thing for me today is really like, what can we do to sort this out? Okay, so can I just bring in Ben, because I know that Graham's got to leave, and yeah, over to you, Ben.
Thanks. So I'm gonna if you can give me 2 minutes, Graham, before you go, I'll spin you a metaphor and then we'll talk about a solution, right? So the metaphor is there's loads of equations I could give you as to if I chuck you a ball, you can catch that. There's loads of equations, gravity, all this sort of stuff. Or you could just be like a darts player or a snooker player where you just sort of learn it, right? You just sort of understand it through experience, right? So what we've heard here is we need to be able to show where these timetables are wrong, basically, in order to enforce contractual obligations on the bus companies who owe us data, right? Need to be able to continuously update this data to future-proof it so the timetables are updated as automatically as possible. And to be honest, in that metaphor that I've just spun there, I don't really care what all the underlying mechanics are. I don't care about traffic dynamics, right? People at the university, some of them care about that. I'm not particularly caring about that. All I want is to know what all the input data is, which is how many passengers there are, what the traffic conditions are, what the weather's like, how many drivers are on, all of the data we can get. Output is a time, right? So the solution to that, in my opinion, is machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? So I don't know if you have any experience with that, but that is the general solution to this problem, and that is well founded. That's how Google generate their traffic data. And if you're interested in running a project on this, I'm not suggesting that you do, I'm not saying that you should, but there's people at university with this experience, and we can all work together to do that if you want to do it.
Thank you, Ben. We're definitely moving into an age of this technology, and machine learning is something that it's a solution, isn't it? It knows, yes, at that day, at that time, this is what it does. Yeah, I don't know how it works. It's a dark art in terms of predictability. But yeah, the machine can learn. So over to you, Graham. I don't want to put you out of a job, right? that's not what we want to do. But yeah, can you give us your first thoughts about machine learning?
Yeah, I understand there's probably things that can improve on the system, but there's also the problem about, again, when you do the timetable element, is that, as we say, there's a set of timetables on a bus stop that costs a lot of money, and we can't continually be changing those to deal with changes that might happen. I think the operators in performance and stuff are the fluctuated timetables during the day, which should be the key element of the stuff. When it comes to a peak time or morning time, the timetable needs to be extended to cover those areas. It shouldn't be the same across whether it's first thing in the morning or last thing at the night. It should be within, we know it's busy, they know it's busy. I think some of the elements around their software might cause problems where it just draws a line on a map and then works out around the speed area and says that's X number of minutes to cover that journey. Those things are key, I think, to creating a better timetable stuff. I've no issue with working with Ben and stuff, and if we're allowed to provide information, which I think Dave can come up back with.
Thank you, Graham. I'm sure there's money and all sorts of conversations to be had, and there's lots of conversations. But yeah, initial thoughts. Dave, can I ask you?
Yeah. Just to sort of summarise, I think where we got to. I mean, I think there's a couple of issues that Graham in particular sort of identified that that we need to have a system that's based upon robust timetables, and there's a bit of an issue there. I think Ben's quite helpfully said that there are other things we could sort of look at. I think whilst I'm by no means close to the technology side of it, I think we're probably underselling a system that actually does have a certain level of I careful to use terms like machine learning and artificial intelligence because it's sort of a little bit beyond me, but the fact that this does actually generate a prediction is, and I think that would be quite useful, is perhaps a session with Ben and Graham and maybe the suppliers as well to say, well, let's just understand how the prediction calculation works and is there anything we can do. I would sort of just caution a little bit that if we've already sort of we spend have spent quite a significant amount of money in getting the system we've got. So, and if we want to build in new and greater technologies, it's a discussion for the wider combined authority in terms of funding that. Because it's not it would have to look at a priority of doing that against lots of other things. So so there's that. I think the other thing that we shouldn't lose sight of is that the other factor in this is the performance of the traffic on the roads and the variability of that, and that is probably the hardest of all these things to crack, to be honest. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that because those of us who sort of watch these things will know that West Yorkshire has quite an unpredictable traffic environment. It's perhaps not as congested as some other city regions in terms of big long queues, but something needs to happen on one part of the road network in West Yorkshire, and the rest of the road network affected by it. So we need an element of realism around the traffic conditions as well. But I think we're well sort of prepared to have further discussions and involve whoever's necessary to get this right, because I think as the chair said at the beginning, customer confidence in the buses is actually partly predicated by customer confidence in this system. So I think we recognise that.
Thank you, Dave. I'm aware there's a few more questions. I've got Councillor Mark Thompson next.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few questions. Just a question first on predicting from history on software, which confuses me somewhat because I always thought software would be developed around real time or futuring rather than looking back at what was. So I just wondered why we wouldn't look at different pieces of equipment on each one of the buses and pieces of transport, GPS, Wi-Fi, driver's mobile phone, etc. Some kind of real-time comms that's on each one of the buses, why we couldn't capture information on the real time there. There's also online things that we use in council, which would be Compass, One Network, that tells us road blockages, times, where they are, what type of road blockage they are, if there's temporary traffic lights there, to give us a real-time predicted delivery of a bus rather than going back to 4 years ago to predict when the buses are going to arrive. So that was one thing. Definitely the Wi-Fi. I know I worked on the York Inner City Wi-Fi, and we were looking at buses there to be able to track real time within seconds rather than minutes or tens of minutes. So it seems odd to me, coming from a comms and tech background, why we would look at history. So that's my main question. Is there not other methodologies and other inputs that we can have as far as information that give individuals more accurate information, and then wrap that up in an app that people could use and is more accurate and usable? You know, if we can predict our delivery of a pizza within seconds, I'm sure we can predict something as big as a double-decker bus within minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for revealing that you've worked in IT. I've got that one. Okay, so yeah, it's true, isn't it? Our culture's changed, and we have that expectation of this real time, and we expect it to be delivered everywhere. And I'm aware you've invested an awful lot of time and money in creating this system, and it is one of the biggest in Europe, as you've said. Can I ask?
Can I just come back on one point Councillor Thompson says? I mean, this system is based upon information supplied by the bus back into the system. Every bus has is reporting in as it goes through, and I'm going to tell you how frequently that happens. So, just to reassure members that this is actually based upon what that bus is doing at any particular point in time in its route. Yes, it's comparing where the bus is to where it should be on the schedule. That's the system. That's how the prediction system works. I think Councillor Thompson makes a good point, and probably is one for future developments and thinking around as to how you actually factor very, very live in data about things we know about, like a road closure happening that day and that sort of thing, into the system. So there's thinking to do there, but I just want to reassure members this isn't. This is based upon that bus telling the system, I'm here, and I should be there. I mean, that's basically how it works.
Thank you for that clarity, Dave. Yeah, I understand it's in the ticketing machine, I think Graham told me, and it responds every 30 seconds, I think you said.
Yeah, I've been dealing with first and ticketer, because it's in the ticketer machine. On the machine, it goes to the ticketer back office and it comes to us. So it's now sent on a what you call an action. So if it leaves a stop, there's an update. There's a 30-second update. If it issues a payment, EMV card payment, there's an update. It all sets through to the system, and we get updates that vary between 30 seconds to 2 or 3 seconds on the position of the bus. But the position of the bus and the information then creates what the prediction is. The historical prediction doesn't look back for X number of years. The information I've got is from the scheduled and the reporting book, historically what buses have done. The predictions work. I think it looks back on the last 3 journeys that have that element, and then it creates a sort of leveled out prediction from the system. Because over the time, you won't use historical data for a long time because schedules change and it creates things. So we're looking at daily progression of the service and see how it performs as it goes along, historically looking back over the day.
Thank you, Graham. That's really useful to know how it works. Councillor Tina Benton, thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, really. Initially, what is the actual cost of the system?
The cost of the system, as in centralised, is around about 180,000 a year divided across the participants in the park. So it's a split cost between the primary partners are ourselves, South Yorkshire and York, and then there's sub-partners, which is Hull, North Yorkshire, minor partners in the agreement, because the system, literally anything that operates into the Yorkshire region is covered. There's something like 36,000 stops in the system, and I think it's just short 2,500 vehicles. We get data for anything coming from as far north as Middlesbrough and as far south as Derby. We get information for predictions that come into the system.
Okay. And the second part of the question is, we've just been speaking about how the system's updated, and you said it's updated every 30 seconds via the bleep or whatever on the buses. How come when Dr. Hansen did his survey, he said, I think you commented on 2 routes, and you said that as it got nearer the stops, the delay was getting higher, the waiting time was getting more. Is that right?
Yeah, mostly. I called it the dwell time, but the dwell time is already something used. So if it says a minute on the board, how long is it going to say a minute on the board? That increases. Yeah. But obviously the bus is still getting closer, so the overall error is going to get down, but the error per minute goes up. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
And bearing that in mind then, so if they're updated every 30 seconds, why are they sometimes not turning up, as Dot says, for 10 minutes? And another question, where are the buses when you've got 2 on the board and suddenly one just disappears? The ghost bus. Where are they?
All right, ghost buses, that's another really big subject. I think the predominant things about when you get a bus disappear, it's an operational issue. It's either been pulled from the service and not cancelled, which is predominantly what we see all the time. And I've historically, whenever I've any done any digging into this, the operator's not pulled the service and not cancelled it. So that's times you'll suddenly see. So for instance, you're waiting in Leeds, you've got a bus that comes into Leeds, it goes up, there's a changeover in centre Leeds. The next stop up, the bus will pull up. There's no driver for the changeover. The system is still generating a prediction because the bus came in. The operator don't cancel the service. So the prediction within the time limit will just count itself down to when it's meant to go, and it'll clear off the screen. So the operators all have the functionality to cancel services now. Whether they do cancel every service that gets cancelled or doesn't run is not happening. I know that for a fact. So that's when you generate this problem, because there's not, if you're on the street, the driver's not reporting back to their control room to cancel this bus because there's no driver. So you'll end up seeing that information. The displays are on a update, or the web updates on every 30 seconds. It's pointless if a bus is sending an update every 2 seconds because it's doing something functionally and it's still not moving. It's not generating a different prediction, so there isn't a change in the prediction, so the system doesn't send out a change in the prediction. So that's how the benefits, because the whole thing is on the basis of low-cost data consumption and keeping it quite streamlined instead of sending information after information, because when you generate, for instance, like having a really regular input, you have to have then a system that can actually process 2,500 vehicles updating every 30 seconds. But if you then update every 2 seconds, that's a considerable amount of processing power. And there are elements of saying, well, doing a 2-second update doesn't really gain any benefit from doing a 15-second update to a system. You are not passing out that much more information that's relevant to the public. If a bus is going to be, like I say, you can see the situation of why when you see a 1 minute prediction, it's actually 1 minute to 1 minute 59 prediction, because the system works on the basis of the traffic commissioner's window. So 1 minute is actually 1 minute 59 seconds, and 2 minutes is up to 2:59 seconds, because that's how the process works of how the bus operators report how late their service is run. So the whole system uses that functionality to then generate predictions and generate the DMs out on the systems.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I just want to check in. Are you all right to stay for a bit longer? Thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I suppose one of the questions that comes from that then, so if they don't cancel this bus, presumably, are we still paying for it? Over to you, Dave.
It depends. I mean, if it's a tendered service that operates under contract with a combined authority, we have a system process where operators need to report that back to us in what we call lost mileage, and we'll make an adjustment on their contract payment accordingly. However, that's probably only likely in 10-15% of cases, and in most cases, if it's a commercial bus service, then and if it's cancelled, then there is no contract as such. There's the bus operator's obligations under its license, but I think it's one thing that we've talked about in these meetings before and others in our wider bus reform conversations, is that bus services run as commercial operations, and therefore if a bus company cancels a commercial bus service, there isn't any sort of contractual breach occurring between them and the combined authority, and so obviously they risk their license if they do it too often, but also in how public transport works, there sometimes is the necessity to cancel some services so that the resources can be used to provide a more robust service as the day goes through. So cancelling services may need to be done as a matter of course to be able to put that bus back into position so that it can be on time later on in the day. And I think, as I think a few members have pointed out, the bus services do deteriorate as the day goes through because the sort of knock-on effect of things. So I think Councillor Foster mentioned earlier, you experience in the morning slightly better than you experience in the afternoon, and that's the reason.
Thanks for that, Dave. Councillor Pinnock was next.
Thank you, Chair. Some of what I was going to say has already been confirmed by Dave Pearson and Graham. But I just want to emphasise, therefore, that what we are looking at is how the system actually works. That's the important bit. And of course, when it first came into being, what I imagined was there was a thing on the bus called a transponder, I think. I don't know whether that's still called that.
Way back.
Which got the, which told everybody else where the bus was, and Dave actually confirms that is the case. I'm still not clear what the role of prediction is in all of this, because naively one thinks, well, each bus has a unique identifier, I suspect. Why can't you just say, well, that bus is there and it's supposed to be going there? Why can't we then say, all right, yes, there is a bit of prediction involved in that, but you know what the route it's on, so you know where it's going to go, unless there's a rogue driver, of course. But But I think, I agree, this is one of the important things that we need to sort out, because amongst other things, if people can't rely on the services turning up when the things say they do, then we've had it, particularly those people who live in rural or semi-rural areas. It's all right to some extent in a big city like Leeds, because another bus will be along in a few moments. But it's the rural areas that is the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Brooks next.
Yeah, I think first of all, there are vast swathes of inner city Leeds that aren't covered by a bus service. First of all, but that's not relevant to this. So I suppose my question is, whose responsibility is it to actually sort this out? Because like, there's the bus companies who are supposed to be making a profit. Like, it's expected that bus services can make a profit. Bus services don't, or bus companies don't tend to operate in areas that they think that they can't make a profit. So therefore, any services in place that they're running should be making a profit. And then surely if you continue in that vein, it would be better for their business if their customers understand how reliable or how regularly, or like, you know, the time that it's going to take for the bus to get there. So I mean, I don't really understand how it can be the combined authority's responsibility to sort out something like this when, like, the buses are able to come in, take the profit, and yet we've got to run around after them trying to make it so that they can make better profits. So the fault, from what you've said, I know that this meeting isn't about finding fault, but the fault does seem to lie with the operators with this, because they're not updating things. So I suppose the second part of my question is, when is it that the combined authority will be able to run bus services directly? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. There just opened a massive topic. We have, can I just say, we've just got 25 minutes and I do want to put something into the work.
I mean, I think simplistically, the bus operators are responsible to set the timetables and deliver the service to the timetables. That's their responsibility. In terms of this real-time prediction system, and clearly it's a system that is managed by the Combined Authority, Graham, and our system supplier, and the responsibility there is to get that system to give the most sort of reliable predictions that it can. So the sort of responsibility for the technology, put simply, is Graham and the supplier, and the Combined Authority. Responsibility for delivering a reliable bus service is the responsibility of bus companies, and I think that's quite clear. In terms of responsibilities, obviously what we talk about here is how you bring those two things together to get the best outcome for the customer, and I think that's the challenge we've got with this. In terms of the wider question, I think we can, and to Helen and colleagues, provide members of this committee perhaps with a little bit of an update as where we are with the bus reform work that's ongoing, so that you've got some sort of familiarity with that. So maybe we can do that separately in terms of the other question that you asked.
Thank you, Dev. Yeah. So bus franchising is a thing, and it's something that's being looked at. We don't have time to go into that today, unfortunately. Can I ask Councillor Anna Watson?
Great, thank you. I just wanted, obviously we're spending a lot of time talking about kind of reliable real-time information. Obviously we have large parts of the network which don't even have any real-time information. So I just want to, we've got, if you're looking at our the bus improvement plan, one of the main KPIs is around increased bus patronage. So to do with what is actually needed to get more people onto the buses, how big a priority is it that we've got real-time information that is totally precise and accurate, or where does it sort of fit in our priorities of what needs to happen to increase bus patronage? Because I mean, for someone who lives on a route that, I have bus stops without any real-time information, so it doesn't matter to me if the real-time information is accurate in Leeds or not, because I don't even have any here. So I'm just thinking for me as a punter, what are the things that are going to help me get on, and how important, what assumptions are you making, therefore, about how important it is to have really precise information for real time to get people onto buses?
Thank you, thank you. And what you're saying is you rely on the board being there. You know, a lot of us have phones. Is there any way we can get all of this stuff onto the phone so that we're all on board with it?
Yes, and it is, and I think one of the things I think we need to be absolutely clear on is that all buses in West Yorkshire are in this system, so there is real-time information. There aren't screens on bus stops everywhere, and we have our sort of programs of investment programs in transport is actually increasing the number of bus screens on bus stops, and so for the Transforming Cities Fund we'll see more screens coming, and through the Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme that's probably why you see more in Leeds than you see in other places. But in terms of the buses out in the rural areas, then absolutely, please use the website and the online mobile phone systems that'll tell you that. So that, I think that's one part. I think the other question really is how important that is, and clearly customer confidence in bus services is key to delivering the bus service improvement programme. We do need to make sure that the systems we have are accurate, and I think that's in many respects the reason why we're having this conversation today. And if that requires investment in further technology, then obviously we need to develop business case to do that. But obviously we have invested heavily in a system that does cover all of West Yorkshire, and is available to people to use on the mobile phone, and has been for probably 15 or more years. So that facility's been there for some time.
Thank you, Dave. Is that answering your question, Anna?
I mean, obviously there's lots of, and I know lots of elderly people that don't have a smartphone, so they do rely on there being a board there. So that's one thing, but my thing was really about, I just wanted to sort of, in the hierarchy of what's needed to happen for us to increase numbers onto our bus system, where do we see this? I was just sort of saying, do we have a sort of idea of the hierarchy here, and so therefore we know where we need to be putting, other priorities, both of, us as West Yorkshire, but also us as councillors and Scrutiny as well, into that hierarchy.
Thank you, Anna. Yours is a follow-up to that. Would you like to answer that first before Ben gives his follow-up?
I mean, Helen can come in terms of the service improvement plan,
yeah.
if you want to.
Would you like to answer that? Where do we fit in the hierarchy of?
So the bus service improvement plan, the vision in the bus service improvement plan basically makes customers the centre of all of this, and it's that whole journey approach. So there are a range of factors which impact on the offer of the service, and real time is one of those. That is one outlet of kind of information sharing, if you like, to give people comfort or understanding of their journey. Another part of that is obviously reliability of service. So what infrastructure is in place on the roads to enable the buses to run quicker, to run more reliable journeys. Tying the two together, the information side, the customer service side, and the reliability of the service offer and the supporting infrastructure to make that happen, come as a package to enable customers to have more confidence in the timetable and the information side that they're seeing relative to what the actual operation is on the road. And so rather than it being a hierarchy, if you like, it's more about kind of an overarching vision that enables that overall customer offer.
Thanks for that, Helen. If I could ask Ben to just come in.
Yeah, the thing that triggered my interest in all this actually was I was happy just knowing it myself, but then the mayor did the mayor's big bus chat where she went and asked people these actual questions. Now that's a biased data set because they're all bus users. What did they say? Have we got the survey results? What do they think the hierarchy is?
Firstly, I think it's a bit unfair to say it's a biased survey. I mean, the mayor's big
not the survey's biased, but the people that were being asked were in bus stations, so they're already on buses.
So I mean, we can supply you with information around how comprehensive the mayor's big bus chat was, and we have sought to include non-bus users and a much wider survey of people, and the results that the mayor's big bus chat finished, I think, Helen, 2 weeks ago. So we will have the results, but I think I don't think it's fair to say it's a biased sample. I think that's and I'd want to correct that. But the purpose of the Mayor's Big Bus Chat is to inform how we actually progress bus services going forward, and to seek the views of people and to be able to incorporate that, and to a certain extent to answer the question in terms of where the importance of information sits. Well, we've just done a very extensive public consultation and engagement process to understand exactly where that fits in terms of customers' perspectives as well, and I think that's an important feature. We have a bus service improvement plan, but it will be shaped by what comes back from the Mayor's Big Bus Chat. So I think the importance of that in shaping the future approach to bus services is we shouldn't underestimate it or undervalue that particular survey.
Sorry, I'll just follow up. I don't mean bias in a bad way. It's just like scientific term. I just assume that because all of those consultations were in bus stations, were they not?
No.
Oh, amazing!
Sorry, no.
Some sessions were held in bus stations, but I think it's very unfair to sort of to basically it's been a major public engagement process that the Combined Authority has done over the last 2 or 3 months, and to sort of distill it into saying it's biased because it was just on bus stations, I think is totally inaccurate, and I'd want to correct that.
Okay, thank you for that. And if anyone wants to make comments, can you come through the chair? Thank you. Okay, so next, moving on to Carol, Councillor Thurkell, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard today how big this system is. Is it too big to be able to manage it properly? Because we are relying, from what I understand, I don't have a great deal of knowledge on the subject, but that it's based on the timetables provided by the bus providers. So is it too big to handle? Are you getting the correct information to be able to give the real-time information to customers that need this?
Thank you, Graham.
No, sorry, the system's not too big. The supplier we have runs the stagecoach system, which is something like 7,500 vehicles across nationally. So it's not too big. The system can increase its capacity quite easily because it's cloud-based and it's expandable. The fundamental issue, like we said earlier, is if the time it's rubbish in, rubbish out, basically, to an extent. If we do not get a level of sensible timetable information, then that impacts everybody on the street. Because if you are going to have, like you see, you stood there, if you do get a bus that's not tracked and you suddenly see a sign just disappear, and then 10 minutes later the bus just comes under schedule, that's not necessarily a real time that's causing the impact. That information, if it's scheduled, is what we've been supplied by the operator to put as what they say they're going to do on it. So it's that impact.
Yeah, would you like to come back on that?
So if it's rubbish in, rubbish out, what are the consequences for that rubbish going in? Are we actually penalising some of these bus operators? How does it operate? I mean, we don't want to be in a blame culture, I understand that, but somebody should be accountable for that rubbish that's going in, surely.
I think as we've said this a few times, I think it's important that we probably do need further sessions with bus operators to actually work through. I think rubbish in, rubbish out is a little bit of a pejorative term. I think what Graham has pointed out here is that for some services, the expected journey time between point A and point B is not realistic, and we need to work through the data with those bus operators and say you need to put timetables in that do reflect the actual traffic journey times. And I think, as we said earlier, the fact that there has been quite a lot of instability around bus timetables, we need to get back to a position where we've got greater level of stability in it, and I think that's the task that needs to be, and I'm quite happy for that to be a recommendation that comes out of this conversation.
Thank you, Dave. Really, really appreciate your openness to take new things on board. It's definitely something that needs to be looked at, doesn't it? I'm just aware of time. We've got about another 20 minutes, and we've still got another agenda item. And I've got Councillor Hames, Councillor Lennox and Councillor Thompson and Tina Benton, Councillor Benton. So I think we need to just draw a line after that. I think that's probably as much discussion as we can have. Okay, over to you, Councillor Hames.
Thank you, Chair. All this talk about boards on bus stops, we don't have any of that. I come from a semi-rural area, not the wilds of Wanney. There's a lot of towns round about and people needing buses. When I saw this £2, anywhere, anytime, anywhere in West Yorkshire, I thought, oh great, this should be an incentive. So I did a little bit of research and I've yet to go in a bus stop where there's an actual timetable in Wakefield area. All the information is old notices that tell you to get in touch with, go on the website and find out when your buses are running. But that's not any use to anybody that's wanted to make use of the service that hasn't used the service before. And so I did a bit more research because we were getting notices that this route is won't start till 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. It's been reduced. And then another one, 408, 409, has been deregistered. So that's one village in South Pontefract that's been cut off completely. So I had to talk to the contractors. We have a lot of private bus contractors that are holiday people and stuff like that. And they don't want to do the morning runs because they're taking school children. We have a lot of educational establishments in South Pontefract and the sixth form college, and they're coming from out of the area, and they all want to work on these contracts. Now, it occurred to me that how much is it costing us to put these bus services on, and are we going to be able to take full advantage of this £2 incentive from the Lord Mayor? I don't know what pressure you can put on and who decides on whether contractors have to stick to the routes that they've signed up for, or whether they can alter the routes so that they can do these lucrative school contracts. And how much is it actually costing us?
Councillor Hames, thank you. Can I ask you pop that question down? And I think what we need to do is look at all the routes that we're going to lose and we've lost, and we're going to work that through. Is that okay? We just get, yeah, please do. Any councillors who've got experience of particular routes, please write those questions down and we'll put them all together, if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Lennox. Thank you.
While the discussion has been going on, a little bit of this has been answered, but what my essential question was what best practice is there elsewhere in similar sized networks? I know that you said that the provider that we use actually does Stagecoach's real time as well. That seems to me, is that in Greater Manchester? That seems to me... It's their national one, right. So that seems to me a good comparator. We've heard a little bit more about how, obviously we understand that it's the information and the data that we're getting from the providers that we put in that means that, you know, what the outcome is. Do we know if they've experienced other issues with something like Stagecoach? How have they worked that through? So that's maybe something to sort of, if there is any info about that to share or to sort of consider as we move forward with this. What's the best practice elsewhere? Are there comparable networks, and what can we find out if they've had similar issues with this real-time issue? And my other comment was more less about the real-time issue and more about the whole bus improvement plan. What consultation do providers have to conduct with communities before they start to cut routes, or is it purely an economic decision for them about whether or not routes are being used? On page 28 of the pack, it says that the core network is going to be expanded so that everyone will live near to a bus stop with a service that arrives at least every 15 minutes. Where I represent, there's going to be lots and lots of houses built nearby, and routes are still being cut in that. So what does near to a bus stop mean? What does near to that? And, you know, obviously it's about, like I say, the decision that they're taking to cut the routes. Is that purely an economic decision for them? Do we have any sort of way of asking for their collaboration with us to consult with communities?
That's a really good question. And again, we are going to do bus cuts. Okay. I think because this is really more about real time today. So if we can keep to that, but it's really good questions, and we need to write those down. Okay, let's make a list of them, and let's come together and do a workshop, because it's a massive thing that's going on at the moment. I know it's not as many buses have been lost as were going to be lost, but even so, we've lost some services, and there's going to be lots of questions to ask about that. But the real-time part of the question, please.
Fundamentally, the Yorkshire system is actually, outside London, the best performing system in the country. The issue that we're seeing with some of the stuff is totally data related. Structurally is used as an example in a lot of places for how so many basically councils, etc., in their regions have worked together to create this massive system. So it is used as the basis for a lot of systems as well. So I've done systems delivered in Leicestershire and places like that, which fundamentally the supplier does the data side of things. I have a team that work on providing the data and processing the data. We as an authority are like nobody else outside London, is that we upload, we process the data we get from the operators, and we put it into this system. I have a team of 2 that work on the data that have so much knowledge, you know, that they are so dependent on the system and experience of dealing with this and working with this and creating systems, because we then, to an extent, get data from the operators, and we check the data we get from the operators. We'll go back to the operators telling them simple things like, there's a spelling mistake in a destination. There isn't that attention to detail on the side of the other things that happens with them, and we'll have a service suddenly comes to us and they'll be missing a stop. But the last day we got, the stop was there, so we scrutinise the data, and I'd say 99% of the data we get out on the street is actually accurate compared to a lot of other systems, because if you were to go with the government's BOD system, where the operators just throw the data into the system, it's not validated. So nobody knows actually if that data is correct. We have a level of validation to see if the data is correct and it's accurate compared to what we get out and what we put out in public, because the finger gets pointed at us if the display is wrong. So we're sat here, you know, so we are continually trying to improve the system and make it better. We're doing through procurement we've done, we're working on increasing the system capacity, and we're increasing and making it more reliable and getting quicker ways of processing data and turning it around, because we're on a 2-weekly cycle where we'll get data from every operator in the region. So we're talking about 20 operators plus local authorities, and then we process that, and that gets uploaded into a system on a 2-weekly basis. In fact, COVID times, staff were working doing it virtually all week. To do it on a weekly basis, sometimes we were changing these twice a week to deal with the pressures of the timetable cuts that we had. But but the system's progressing all the time to make it better, and we feedback all the time. Because I used to work for the supplier, so I understand what they're telling me. So if they're telling me something that I don't believe in, I don't believe you. Because, you know, so it's that context of I know what the system can do, and now we progress it forward, going forward.
Thank you, Graham. And yeah, how lucky are we to have somebody who's worked on it from the beginning, so to say. Okay, so we've got, I think I've got 2 more people. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. It was reference to the contracts that we have with the commercial businesses, the operators. So they're a commercial business running a public service, and our input, I guess, or our responsibility to the public is to make sure the SLAs and the contractual obligations of those commercial businesses are kept tight, so that those commercial businesses run an excellent service for our public, for the residents. So if our software is on point, but the information that we're getting from the commercial businesses isn't, is it not up to us, and can we enforce the SLAs or tighten the contracts so that that input is a great deal better for the residents that we are beholden to? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a big question. Please, can you expand? Thank you.
I think I go back to what we've said a few times this morning. I mean, most bus operators operate a service on a commercial basis. They have some regulatory obligations through the licensing process. Some bus services are then commissioned, socially necessary bus services commissioned by the Combined Authority under contract with bus companies. And so they do operate under contract. But there isn't a SLA or a contract that actually says that commits bus operators to submit to have the accuracy of the information that comes in the system. It's done as a partnership between the bus operators and the Combined Authority, and to a certain extent the councils as well. And that's, as Helen said right at the beginning, we're developing into a more formal enhanced partnership. We've been working in partnership with bus operators for quite some time. And generally, I mean, notwithstanding the fact that, we identified some weaknesses in the system that is converting into some inaccuracies in the predictions that customers are getting, we have a working system where bus operators provide data. That data is validated, as Graham's just described, through our processes, put into a system, and we get customer outputs. We absolutely do need to improve the customer outputs. But to a certain extent, I think we need to just caution that we have commissioned the work on bus reform because there are lots of issues and concerns, that some of which have been raised this morning, about how buses work and the relationship between the commercial environment and the public funded element of it longer term, and that perhaps it could work far better if it was all sort of bound into a more contractual environment than it is at the moment. But it is a bit of a sort of array of different arrangements for different things. That's what bus deregulation is. So I think to a certain extent, I think we should reflect on the fact that we have an arrangement in West Yorkshire where bus operators are willing participants and active participants in this process. We've got some issues around the accuracy of the timetables, and we'll need to work through them. And I think, as I said earlier, we're willing and will prepared to do that. But I think I just caution any sort of thoughts that somehow there's a big contractual stick that can make this happen, because it's not quite as straightforward as that.
Yeah, I'll just, if only I heard from up here. Yeah, no, it is. It's a very difficult situation to be in, isn't it? I'm just aware of time. Tina, is it an urgent question? Or is you okay? We've just got 10 minutes. They've answered part of it. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Oh, quick. Okay, really quickly.
Sorry, part of the question's been answered really, to do with the bus providers, but it was just regarding Dr. Hanson as well. How long, we're looking at this from a consumer perspective, reliability, the real-time displays, and the information's not correct. So you've just explained how difficult it is to get information from the bus providers. But from Dr. Hanson's point of view, he's offered to meet with you to help. I don't understand the software aspect, but yes. So how long, will that take? When can you get together, and when can consumers expect to see an improvement in the information that's being displayed?
How long's a piece of string?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't think that question is really we're not going to have an answer to that right this minute.
No, but I think, as we said earlier, quite happy to have ongoing conversations as to how we can make this better, and that's I think that goes without saying.
Okay, everyone, it's been a really interesting discussion, and thank you so much, guys, for your openness to hearing, if there's other possibilities, and it's great to hear that we've got the best system in the north, even though it's not given us what we want. We do, as Dave said, we do need to do some sessions with bus operators to work through those timetables, and need to develop a business case to be able to develop this further. So there's lots of conversations that need to happen before we can start putting time frames around it, I think. Okay, so we need to move on. I would just like to say thank you to Dr. Hanson for coming in today, and thank you to Graham. Thank you for your time. And we will reconvene. If we can suggest then that we have this as a regular, say, 3 month, we'll see how we're getting on in 3 months' time, if that's okay. All right, thanks everybody. Okay, let's move on. So, item number 8 is our Transport and Infrastructure Scrutiny Work Programme. So, we did have a conversation about this in the summer. For those of you who are new to this committee, in Combined Authority we've got like 6 key themes. There's inclusive growth, environment, health, well-being. States the aim is to reduce the traffic emissions to near zero. And if we're really serious about transport decarbonisation plan, then we need to be, don't we? We're looking at the weather we've had. We really need to step up the pace. So to decarbonise all modes of transport by 2050, which is what the plan aims, then behaviour change is obviously a key component of that. I'm aware that we have been invited to a meeting with Friends of the Earth. Can I just check that have we all been invited to that meeting? Or is it just, because this is the scrutiny committee, can I say if people want to come, can they come to that meeting on the 27th?
If I could just respond.
Yeah, please.
There was a meeting that West Yorkshire Friends of the Earth has organised with a
Thank you for that. Okay, that's great. So so I'd like to thank Councillor Watson for bringing this to our attention as well, suggesting that we need to scrutinise if Wicker is on track to deliver net zero transport and infrastructure. There was a summary report by Mott MacDonald in January 22, I think that was, on the carbon impact of the capital schemes by Wicker. It has reviewed 30 of the transport projects, and it says that they are estimated, in fact, to increase carbon emissions over the appraisal period. So although that they say they won't increase emissions by a huge amount, we already know that we have to decrease our transport emissions anyway by 3 million tonnes by 2030 across West Yorkshire. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the Transition Town Plan, but it was always my understanding that you have to at least use some of that oil to be able to create the infrastructure for further sustainability. So I don't know whether that is something that will be discussed. But so if that's possible, it would be useful to bring decarbonisation further up the work plan, if that's okay, Hannah, if we can put that in the next meeting. Okay, so as we've discussed as well, all the buses that have been cut, we also need to have a conversation about that. Can I ask members to raise their hand if they'd be up for doing a workshop on that, which is a meeting outside of this? Okay, Hannah, could you just take some? If we pop it out to everyone, we need to have a fairly reasonable size group for it to work, really, I guess. So, yeah, okay, thank you for that. So any questions that are about those buses not actually existing, being taken out of service, being reduced, whatever, let's have that in-depth conversation in a workshop. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting on the 17th of November. Thank you to all of our officers who've prepared reports, and to everybody who's travelled from all over West Yorkshire. And I'd like to thank our Friends of the Earth colleagues over there who listened to our real-time information. Okay, and I'd like to also thank Khalid, who's unfortunately not been able to join us today. and Hannah for all their hard work and our continued support that you provide all of us with. Have a safe and real-time journey home.
Sorry, so if we move decarbonisation to be the next
Yes.
meeting, so it's January we're looking at.
Yeah, that's right.